Warning, warning, warning. Important things must be said 3 times. This is a show that will make you laugh until you have a six-pack. Those who have just had an appendectomy, suffer from stomach issues, or are severely meme deficient lacking a sense of humor should proceed with caution. A down-on-his-luck young man transmigrates into a strange world. He spends 9 long years burning the midnight oil, studying day and night with single-minded devotion, all to become a brilliant scholar brimming with talent. Then, to his utter bewilderment, he realizes this isn't the world of ancient romance movies. It's a world of cultivation where the streets are filled with magic spells and the sky is thick with flying sword energy. His 9 years of studying the classics instantly went down the drain, rendered almost entirely useless. However, he has a second thought. Isn't this the classic opening of a mindless power fantasy novel? This must mean my talent is unparalleled in the world. He rushes off to get tested, only for reality to give him a resounding slap in the face. It turns out he doesn't have a single spirit root in his body. Utterly devastated, he sits on the ground looking like a loser who just lost his life savings. Just then, a Sect Master appears. To meet his recruitment quota, this Sect Master and his eldest disciple plot to bamboozle the young man. However, the war for talent between sects is brutal. Some even resort to honey traps using handsome men and beautiful women. Fortunately, they still manage to hook a big fish like Yi Ping. Furthermore, he doesn't even ask for a salary. Though if the sect is too pathetic to teach him anything real, he plans to bolt at any moment. He probably never dreamed that the generic bottom-shelf sword intent theories the Sect Master and his disciple made up on the fly would actually be mastered by him through a series of fortunate accidents, turning him into the world's greatest sword god. Opening his eyes, Yi Ping is pale, drenched in sweat and frowning deeply. He realizes things are far from simple. He is transmigrated, following the trope of someone bringing modern knowledge to get rich and famous. This is despite the fact that everyone around him is staring with wide eyes, looking at him in terror as if he were a madman. The crowd whispers, "Look, he's on fire." With soaring momentum, Yi Ping uses a brush to write his name on the golden list, dreaming of the leisurely life he envisions. After 9 years of hard work, he has finally completed his studies. But just then, a majestic immortal, radiating a dazzling blue spiritual aura, glides through the air over the heads of Yi Ping and the commoners. He is completely stunned, petrified on the spot, his mouth hanging open for a long time. Soon, Yi Ping wears a frantic "what the hell is this" expression as reality slaps him in the face yet again. He roars, "Girl, what on earth is going on? This world is definitely not." Meanwhile, the system smugly appears as if to mock him. With a flick of its finger, it confirms an input error regarding the world's setting. "No big deal, just try again." "Good luck." Yi Ping immediately collapses to his knees, radiating a thick aura of resentment. Covering his face, he wails, "Do you know what I've been through these past 9 years? Stop messing with me. I don't want to study anymore. Who would study books when you can become an immortal? Wah?" His outburst causes the people around him to turn back and stare in curiosity. Suddenly, a nerve in his brain seems to connect. Though his face is still blank with shock, Yi Ping discovers something. Wait. Transmigrating into a cultivation world, isn't this the opening to those classic brainless novels? He then shouts excitedly, "Which means my talent must be ridiculously strong." As time flies, Yi Ping decides to prove his fantasy. Thus, at today's spirit testing assembly held in a place shrouded in mist like a fairyland, Yi Ping stands before the spirit testing monument, surrounded by stone dragons ready to test his spirit roots. Then he is once again abandoned by the heavens. The monument coldly displays a few words, "No spirit root." He is speechless. The last shred of his fantasy about the cool cultivation world slips through his fingers. He clutches back tears that flow like a flood and shouts indignantly, "Damn it, I want to go back to Earth. This transmigration is nothing like the novels." The surrounding cultivators cover their mouths to hide their laughter, shrugging in mockery of this loser named Yi Ping. This fatal blow leaves him with nothing to live for. He slumps on the ground, leaning against the railing, looking up at the sky and muttering to himself, "Wah, and here I thought I was the protagonist." Suddenly, an old man walks over and asks, "Young friend, do you wish to cultivate and become an immortal?" Hearing this, he looks over in shock, puzzled by the coincidence and feeling suspicious. Sometime later, at another location, the Qingyun Sect, a house built on a mountaintop, overlooks white cranes flying leisurely. The Sect Master, Taoist Taihua, has a grim expression as he says seriously to the person before him, "Changyu, your master has a mission for you." The next second, his attitude takes a 180-degree turn. With snot and tears, he grabs the young man's shoulders and cries out in feigned sorrow, "My good disciple, you must help your master with this big favor." The eldest brother, Su Changyu, is completely unmoved by Taihua's theatrics. He picks up a cup of tea, smiles slightly, and asks calmly, "What big matter could there be for an obscure bottom-tier sect like ours?" But Taihua covers his face like the kid from Home Alone meeting a burglar, complaining bitterly, "The higher-ups just issued a new policy. They're going to shut down bottom feeders like us unless we recruit 8 qualified disciples within a year and get promoted to a grade 3 sect." Hearing this, Su Changyu remains composed. Sipping his tea, he suggests, Then just find one more person. However, Taihua is overcome with grief, remembering how he knelt like a dog while other sects flaunted their power. He laments, "It's not that easy. I went to the testing assembly yesterday and every sect was fighting like crazy for people. The prices were astronomical. I even begged people, saying don't go, let's talk some more. But those warriors who just finished their spirit tests wouldn't even give me a glance, looking at me with pure disgust. HMPH, trying to recruit a disciple for 3 taels of silver a month? Are you feeding a beggar?" He then recounts how he was physically intimidated by a female cultivator using her ample assets, indignantly accusing her of shamelessly using a honey trap. At the time, that female cultivator was holding a young lad whispering sweet temptations, "Junior brother, come practice dual cultivation with senior sister." It made the kid turn red as a beet while everyone else watched with envy and hatred. Nevertheless, when one door closes, another opens. Taihua found Yi Ping in a neglected corner questioning his life, he continues. "But in the end I managed to pick one up." Su Changyu can hardly believe it. Looking at his masters, "I found a treasure face," he asks. "Wait, master, he really chose us?" Recalling this, Taihua shouts with deep emotion, "Even though he's a total rookie with no spirit roots, it's good enough that someone was willing to come. Most importantly, he agreed to work without a salary." Yiping's eyes had been sparkling like stars, ignoring the people nearby who were flipping him the bird. He had clasped his hands and answered excitedly, "Money is just a worldly possession. As long as you can teach me cultivation, I'll agree to anything. I shouldn't just think about what the sect can do for me. I should think about what I can do for the sect." Sitting before Su Changyu now, Taihua tries to convince his eldest disciple. "Changyu, don't you think he's a bit of a fool? No, wait, where else could you find such a compliant disciple? But I'm worried that once he sees how dilapidated our sect is and realizes he's not learning anything, he'll probably run off. So your master has come up with a brilliant plan." His aged but determined eyes glint with calculation as he declares confidently. "Simply put, we pretend to be peerless masters. You take your junior brothers and sisters and make up some impossible nonsensical techniques to teach him. We stall for time. Once the sect is saved after a year, he can stay or leave as he pleases." After listening, Su Changyu picks his ear, blows away the debris and says disdainfully, "PSH, I thought it was some world-shaking matter that made Master so serious. It's just flexing, isn't it?" He stands up, squints, and asks Taihua a seemingly random trivial question. "Master, do you know what nickname the junior brothers and sisters have given me in private?" The old man looks bewildered. "What nickname?" Su Changyu's bright phoenix-like eyes lower slightly. Su Changyu frowns and replies, "This disciple is humble." He poses dramatically, flicking his robes and letting them flutter in the breeze, continuing, "The king of flexing of Green Mountain, that's me." This leaves Taihua speechless. As if remembering something, Su Changyu strokes his chin and looks to the left. "When it comes to the art of posturing in this vast Qingyun province, if I claim to be second, I doubt anyone would dare claim to be first." Having said that, he plants one foot on the table, hands on his hips, and leans back like a narcissistic model, laughing wildly. "You've come to the right person for this. It's my specialty, ha." Seeing Taihua's face turn dark as he internally grumbles, "Is that really something to be proud of?" The old man swallows his pride since he needs Su Changyu's cooperation. He reminds him solemnly, "In any case, Changyu, you just need to successfully stall him for 1 year." However, Su Changyu's eyes are filled with a mysterious confidence. He holds up a palm to reject Taihua's suggestion, leaving the old man confused again. Soon, the Oscar-winning Su Changyu sighs with emotion, "Since I am taking action. The goal of stalling for 1 year is far too low. Dealing with a rookie like him only requires a flick of my wrist." He brags without hesitation, thrusting his hips forward and inexplicably making Taihua look at his heroic stance, promising, "At the very least, I'll make him admire only the Qingyun Taoist sect and not the gods from now on. He'll want to be a Qingyun disciple in his next life too." As soon as he speaks, Su Changyu's nose seems to grow longer from his bragging. He laughs smugly, "Ha ha ha," while Taihua widens his eyes and applauds in amazement. "Oh, it's starting already. Excellent, excellent. The king of flexing of Green Mountain truly lives up to his name." Su Changyu gets even more excited, radiating a shimmering light as he brandishes a longsword. "I'll put it this way, if I fail this mission, I'll dip this sword in sauce and swallow it." He then clasps his hands to bid Taihua farewell. "If there's nothing else, this disciple will take his leave. I'll wait for him at the back mountain tonight." Hearing this, the old man stands up and responds, "Good, I'll use my sword kinesis to fly you back." However, Su Changyu turns and walks away coolly, waving off his master's kindness. "No need," he looks back with a hint of a disdainful gaze. "If you don't see someone for 3 days, you should look at them with fresh eyes. I am no longer that little disciple who needs a ride from his master." After finishing his lines, Su Changyu raises his left arm high, his fingers slowly pointing upward with extreme artistic flair. Seeing this, Taihua's pet owl covers its face in shock and the man himself widens his eyes. "Ah, that gesture, could it be?" On the other side, Su Changyu looks calm, his mouth slightly open as he chants, "May this prosperous world be as you wished." Simultaneously, he roars, "Sword, come." A dazzling beam of light shoots from his fingertips. His pose is incredibly majestic. Even Taihua has to look at Su Changyu in a new light, his pupils contract, his jaw nearly hits his chest and he exclaims, "Wow, it really is sword kinesis, how is this possible?" He's clearly a sword path loser who couldn't learn a single set of techniques in 10 years, however. After a long while, seeing him still holding that pose and basking in self-satisfaction, Taihua begins to sweat. A final falling leaf drifts past Su Changyu's fingers, which are devoid of any spiritual energy. The faces of Taihua and the owl turn sour. Though he knew this disciple was unreliable, he was still fooled by the superb acting. The old man asks despondently, "Don't tell me you?" Su Changyu instantly breaks character, scurrying back to explain, "Haha, I couldn't help but flex again. I don't know sword kinesis at all, I'll still have to trouble Master to give me a lift." Taihua rubs his temples, radiating an aura of resentment, sighing, "What a character, I just hope your new junior brother isn't driven mad by you." Late at night at the peak of the back mountain, the mist clears, revealing a bright, clear moon, perfect for some mystical posturing. Su Changyu stands at the summit like a lone wolf gazing at the distant moon, accompanied only by a few white cranes. However, at this moment, wearing his top 500 of the Qingyun Sword Assembly Collector's Edition battle robe, he is huddled up because of the biting wind, his nose is frozen red and his whole body is shivering. This location, specifically chosen to create an atmosphere, unexpectedly gave Su Changyu an unforgettable experience of freezing. Despite wrapping his clothes tight, he lets out a loud, ringing sneeze. Suddenly, footsteps approach. Su Changyu looks back and whispers, "He's here, he's here." He grabs his sword and jumps a few times to warm up. "Hey, get ready, get ready." On the other side, Yi Bing climbs the long steps of the Qingyun Taoist sect one by one. Leaning against the cliff face, his legs aching and out of breath, he remarks, "The mountain is so high, immortals really are extraordinary." Once he catches his breath, he looks up and is instantly rendered speechless, before Yi Ping's eyes under the bright moonlight. Su Changyu stands with his back to him, majestic and motionless. His cold, aloof aura is like that of a transcendent, unyielding sword immortal. Yi Ping stood dazed for a long time, staring at the man before him who looked like an immortal descended from the heavens. Su Changyu displayed a radiant profile, casually raising his palm to manipulate a flying sword that crackled with spiritual energy like blue lightning. Overwhelmed by the scene, Yi Ping's eyes widened as he thought blankly, "Is this a sword immortal?" But soon, deep within Yi Ping's mind, the image of a sharp-eyed old fox emerged, his brow furrowed in suspicion. "Wait, something doesn't seem right. If they're recruiting a talentless loser like me who has no spiritual energy, doesn't that mean this sect is actually garbage?" He imagined Su Changyu standing atop a mountain peak that pierced the clouds. With tens of thousands of admiring cultivators at his feet, he continued his analysis. Why would such an extraordinary disciple be here? Suddenly, it was as if dozens of electrical currents flashed through his brain, bringing Yi Ping a moment of sudden enlightenment. His mouth hung open and cold sweat poured down as he realized with a shock, could it be? Then Yi Ping's imagination ran wild, linking the scene to those mysterious faces that radiated the aura of the powerful. He speculated privately. On the surface, this sect looks like a nameless, insignificant entity, but that's not the case at all. Looking again at Su Changyu under the moonlight, even the cranes flying past seemed to carry a golden glow. He muttered to himself, "Is this another one of those super hidden sects?" It wasn't over yet. Yi Ping was so excited he felt like he was going crazy. With stars shining in his eyes, he continued to let his thoughts wander. Everyone in this sect must be a top-tier powerhouse. Any one of them could carry me to greatness. It really seems possible. Suddenly, a flash of inspiration hit him. He rested his chin on his hand, scrutinizing the situation with a deep gaze. For instance, when he had followed his master into the sect that morning, the image that had surfaced in his mind was of the Qingyun Taoist sect being so dilapidated it looked like it had been abandoned for 10,000 years. As Yi Ping followed Taoist Taihua, he had been secretly evaluating the place. A sense of ruin had hit him full force. He hadn't felt it then, but looking back now, it was definitely over the top. Yi Ping looked around warily, seeing buildings covered in vines, and couldn't help but wonder, even for a cultivation sect, how could it be this run down? Some houses even had peeling walls, yet the bricks and stones were neatly stacked to the side. He pondered carefully, analyzing, even if it's this old and broken, every corner is exceptionally clean. Yi Ping thought of Taoist Taihua again, who had kindly taken him in, a man abandoned by society. He felt it was extremely abnormal. Add to that this Su Changyu, who was world-shakingly handsome. Yi Ping's brow was tightly knit, his eyes as sharp as a master detective's, yet stuck in a deadlock, as he thought in secret terror. Everything about this place is eerie, but if they are intentionally keeping a low profile to remain hidden from the world, then everything makes sense. Having figured it out, Yi Ping's joy returned as if he had found a precious treasure. He shouted, 3 million sword immortals in the heavens, yet they must all bow their heads when they meet me. This peerless aura startled Su Changyu, giving rise to doubt in his heart. Striking a heroic and dashing pose, Su Changyu turned back and marveled, 3 million sword immortals in the heavens, yet they must all bow their heads when they meet me. That has a nice ring to it. Deep down, however, he was snickering. Nice, that's a top-tier flex. That line is mine from now on. Getting too deep into his role, Su Changyu turned and manifested a streak of multicolored spiritual energy to bolster the atmosphere, feeling secretly smug. I didn't expect to stumble upon such a badass poem while out here acting cool. He then said, since my junior brother praises me so, it would be rude not to return the gesture. At that moment, the spiritual energy in his hand suddenly expanded, forming a vortex of light that reflected in his cold red eyes. Su Changyu then waved his hand, blowing that cluster of spiritual energy toward Yi Bing. As it enveloped his body, Su Changyu said, your senior brother didn't prepare much, so I shall grant you a stroke of divine providence. Yi Ping felt a tremor, as if something were invading his body, and he froze on the spot. Su Changyu continued to play it cool, solemnly explaining his actions. I am the eldest senior brother of the Qingyun Taoist sect. This breeze is actually a secret art of creation that can enhance your cultivation talent. Yi Ping was secretly horrified. He was truly the type to be sold out and still help the buyer count the money. A mere breeze can enhance cultivation talent. Wow, how could an ordinary sect manage that? He then sincerely clasped his hands and gave a 90-degree bow, saying, thank you for your great kindness, senior brother. I, Yi Ping, have no way to repay you. Su Changyu meanwhile hid his hand, which was trembling from overexertion and cramping behind his back, while replying, it's a small matter. In reality, he was laughing internally at how stupid Yi Ping was. What secret art of creation? It was just a gust of wind, the most ordinary breeze imaginable, yet on the surface he remained utterly composed and at ease. Su Changyu sat on a rock and spoke, junior brother, before I teach you the way of the sword, let me ask you a question. This left Yi Ping somewhat confused. A question? Yi Ping's head was filled with theories from web novels, and he reacted instantly. He thought of those mysterious heroes in commoner's clothes from his books. Peerless masters always asked a question before imparting secret techniques. Right, that makes sense. While Yi Bing was still fantasizing about thrilling duels between warriors, Su Changyu asked, what is the supreme realm of the sword Dao? He felt very self-satisfied. Like a devious old fox, he thought, he, only a king of posturers like me could come up with such a profound question. Go ahead, answer. No matter what you say, you'll be wrong. Only then will it show how unfathomably deep my understanding of the sword is. When it comes to flexing, I am number one. On the other side, Yi Bing seemed to fall into his own pure white space, contemplating the question of the supreme realm of the sword Dao with extreme seriousness. His villainous persona appeared again, fingers crossed, as he secretly assessed, this question sounds very professional. Yi Ping's teeth were gritted and his brow was furrowed, desperately putting his brain cells to work. A hidden master, he's 99% a hidden master, but how should I answer? This question seems simple, but it actually contains a supreme artistic conception. After a long time he still looked like he would die trying to find the answer, thinking, an ordinary person would probably answer something like, killing a man in 10 steps, leaving no trace for 1,000 miles, but it certainly won't be that shallow. How should I answer? I must be cautious at all costs. Meanwhile, Su Changyu's face began to turn pale and he started sweating. Hey, I just asked casually. You don't need to be this serious. After a full 15 minutes, Yi Ping's brow furrowed even tighter, determined to dig out an interpretation that would leave Su Changyu speechless. Su Changyu was in agony, cursing inwardly, big shot, it's been an hour already. Can you give it a rest? In reality, Su Changyu was almost frozen solid and couldn't keep up the act anymore. Feeling full of grievances, he thought, I'm going to freeze to death. He had no choice but to speak first. All right, give me your answer. But Yi Bing put on the look of a well-behaved child, worried about being scolded by an elder for a wrong answer, and replied, senior brother, I believe that the supreme realm of the sword Dao is when a single blade of grass can cut down the sun, moon, and stars. This statement left Su Changyu stunned, his eyes wide as he doubted his own hearing. He visualized himself waving a blade of grass into a hurricane, then decisively slashing out a magma-like surge of spiritual energy that tore through the sky, whispering in his heart, cutting down the sun, moon, and stars. He imagined a warrior splitting a mountain without any effort. Su Changyu was crying out for his parents in his heart, rolling his eyes as he gasped. Holy crap, Su Changyu had studied the sword for 20 years and the strongest person he had ever seen could only split a mountain with one strike, a blade of grass cutting down the sun, moon, and stars. Just how big of a flex was that? Seeing him frozen in silence, Yi Ping hurriedly waved his hands to explain, does senior brother think it's too exaggerated? I hope you won't take offense. However, while Su Changyu looked calm on the outside, his heart was shocked beyond measure. This kid is something else. Famous quotes were just pouring out of him. A fellow man of culture, this line is great, it's mine too. He then stood up and walked toward Yi Ping to give his judgment. Indeed, it is too exaggerated. The path of cultivation requires one to be steady. You are aiming a bit too high, junior brother. Yi Ping replied awkwardly, I have learned my lesson. Su Changyu's gaze turned cold as a dark aura emanated from him. Drawing his sword with a flash, he said, how about this? He then swung his sword, drawing a graceful arc in the air with an extremely majestic posture. A deep pit with many cracks appeared on the ground. Su Changyu turned to leave, instructing, I am leaving a sword mark for you. This sword mark is both ordinary and extraordinary. He thought of a cultivator who swung his sword like an 8-armed monster, brandishing weapons to intimidate others, and continued, calling it extraordinary. It also contains the world's strongest sword intent. How much you can comprehend depends on your own destiny. I will come back to see you in 7 days. This load of nonsense left Yi Ping completely convinced. He narrowed his eyes and thought happily. The strongest sword intent, he's 100% a hidden master. I'm so lucky, I really did stumble into a hidden powerhouse sect. After a long while, the task of training the newcomer given to Su Changyu by Taoist Taihua was finally complete. Su Changyu skipped down the mountain in high spirits, thinking, quick, I have to go find second junior brother to share this. Suddenly a girl sitting on a rock not far away shouted, eldest senior brother. She leaned back, supporting herself with her hands, and asked with a look of someone expecting a good show, what do you think of the new junior brother's talent? The female disciple of the Qingyun Sect possessed a truly majestic figure. Her chest so ample it seemed larger than her head. She squinted her eyes with a smile and waved a greeting. Seeing her playfulness, Su Changyu reminded her with a hint of displeasure, little junior sister, you're peeping again. The female disciple hopped down from a rock with excitement and ran over, exclaiming, hee hee, I was just curious. Suddenly, a domineering thought sprouted in Su Changyu's mind. He was ecstatic to have found a guinea pig, and decided to use her to test his effect. Striking an unfathomable pose with his hands behind his back, he spoke solemnly, junior sister. Let us not speak of that for now, he said. Leaving her confused, Su Changyu's expression turned stern, his gaze sharp as he raised a single finger. Senior brother asks you, do you know the power of the highest realm of the sword Tao? The question stunned the female disciple. She clasped her hands nervously and stammered, she thought to herself, what does the sword Tao have to do with me? Why so serious all of a sudden? Then she heard Su Changyu add, let me tell you what the highest realm of the sword Tao truly is. She stood bolt upright, listening obediently as he pointed toward the Milky Way in the vast universe and declared, a single blade of grass can sever the sun, moon, and stars. As soon as he finished, the female disciple's mouth hung open in shock. She found Su Changyu even more handsome than before and was filled with admiration. Then, breaking into a cold sweat, she asked, eldest senior brother, that was so cool. Has your ability to act the part improved again? He immediately struck a pose of hidden victory, covering his face and laughing, haha, you bet, it was cool, right? After her flattery, the female disciple abruptly changed the subject. Now you should answer my question. This left Su Changyu slightly puzzled. Your question? He turned his head toward the distant mountain peak, repeating with feigned depth, how long will it take junior brother to comprehend sword intent? But in the next second, Su Changyu was picking his nose, his expression looking as if he had stepped in filth. How could he possibly comprehend it? Even I don't know the answer to that. She defended her point. I meant just ordinary sword intent. He let out a long sigh and replied that he didn't know that either. The female disciple's face went dark, her mind filled with question marks. Are you playing with me? She thought resentfully. 2 hours later, at the summit of the rear mountain, Yi Ping was still sprawled in front of the sword mark Su Changyu had left behind. He stared at it intensely, like a scientist observing bacteria through a microscope, drenched in sweat and eyes rolling back. Yi Ping still had no results, he whispered to himself, questioning his life choices. No matter how he looked at it, it was just an ordinary crack. Where is this strongest sword intent? Is he lying to me? Suddenly he squeezed his eyes shut and scratched his head in frustration, shouting out in grievance, Yi Ping, what are you overthinking? Everything before has proven that he is definitely a supreme master. At this thought he pressed his face against the sword mark again. His eyes sparkling, he roared with determination. It must be because I'm not working hard enough. His eyes widened so much they looked like they might pop out as he focused even more deeply on the crevice. Yes, that must be it. Now his eyes saw only the light emanating from the deep groove on the ground. Everything else was pitch black. He encouraged himself, Go Yi Ping, keep going. Until his eyes were bloodshot, he suddenly saw the silhouette of a swordsman radiating blue spiritual energy. An image manifested in Yi Ping's mind. The swordsman stood with his back to him, spiritual energy rippling out from beneath his feet like waves on a pond. The figure held a long sword that glowed with a light as fierce as a thunderbolt from a clear sky, appearing exceptionally majestic. Then the swordsman began to demonstrate techniques. He gripped the hilt with both hands, drawing the sword to his side to gather power. Suddenly he leaped and flipped through the air, his gaze as sharp as fire. The swordsman turned and delivered a swift strike accompanied by the crackle of lightning. With glowing eyes he held the sword in one hand and unleashed another move. Then the swordsman leaped high. Tucking his legs into a pose like a goshawk diving for prey, he slashed out a half-moon sword shadow that resonated like the tolling of a great bell. These 4 sword styles, 12 sword moves became increasingly clear in Yi Ping's astonishment. In his eyes the figure constantly shifted. With one strike the world lost its color, and gods and ghosts alike were startled. At other times, sword shadows layered upon each other, cold light flickering with chilling, killing intent. The more he watched, the more Yi Ping became immersed in this martial secret, unable to look away. Then, as if he were personally drawing a blade to practice, he held a hilt in one hand and supported the blade with the other, using spiritual energy to make it glow with golden light and flying sparks. He didn't practice it once, but over and over again. Yi Ping followed the swordsman's demonstration, swinging his sword to the side while counting in his heart. One time, when he reached the second repetition, he used his left foot as a pivot, standing firm as he swung a Z-shaped sword path. Simultaneously, sword shadows flashed across the sky. Then came the third time. Yi Ping took a step back, turned, and unleashed dozens of arched sword shadows. With a sharp gaze, he focused on swinging the sword with his left hand, mumbling to himself as he moved faster and faster. After a while, Yi Ping's sword shadows were no longer simple beams of light but had formed jagged patterns with even greater destructive power. He gasped. The moves were increasing. 12 moves. 15 moves. He didn't stop at 20. Yi Ping had practiced to a realm where his movements were ethereal and his sword blooms were dazzling, nearly identical to the swordsman in his vision. Finally, a terrifying consciousness flooded his mind, as if dozens of Yi Pings were simultaneously piercing a single point in his brain with their swords. As the sun rose from behind the mountain peak, Yi Ping straightened up, his eyes wide with bewilderment. What on earth is happening? His face turned pale, cold sweat poured down, and his pupils contracted as he deduced it must be eldest senior brother. Recalling the breath of fortuitous opportunity Su Changyu had casually conjured, Yi Ping felt a surge of emotion. I never expected that a single breeze could actually raise my talent to such a terrifying level. He isn't just a peerless master, he's much more. Overwhelmed, he couldn't help but burst into tears. After being unlucky for so long, his fortune had finally turned. I actually doubted eldest senior brother earlier. I really shouldn't have. Without stopping, Yi Ping propped himself up with his hands, staring at the sword mark on the stone. He silently soothed himself. Don't get excited, Yi Ping. Stay calm, stay calm. This is only the beginning. This sword mark can surely teach me even more techniques. Keep working. Time flew by, and 7 days later at the eldest senior brother's residence, a manor situated at the peak of a high mountain, Su Changyu took out a box of treasures he used for keeping up appearances. It was filled with accessories, and he was carefully choosing between them. He picked up a hairpin, scratching his head as he considered if it was suitable for such a momentous day. Then he donned a pure white cloak he had scammed from somewhere, his eyes full of anticipation. Su Changyu hummed a little tune. The weather is lovely today. He flicked the hem of his robe and stepped out, adding time to go look cool. Setting off, Su Changyu strolled leisurely across the wooden bridge spanning the creek, humming incessantly. But by the time he climbed to a certain set of stairs halfway up the mountain, he was panting and drenched in sweat, his refined image long gone. He lamented, "This is killing me. If I'd known, I would have picked a different spot." Su Changyu's face was dark with annoyance, and he vented his anger on others. Then again, why does everyone think practicing the sword is easy? It's so frustrating. He recalled 7 days ago when that gossip-loving junior sister had asked him, "What, you're saying even you don't know sword intent?" To this, Su Changyu had frankly admitted, "That's right." Hearing this, she didn't hide her laughter, covering her mouth and insulting him to his face. "Peeved senior brother, you're too much of a loser. Haven't you been practicing the sword for 10 years? How do you not even know sword intent?" As soon as the words left her mouth, Su Changyu launched a physical attack, giving her a sharp rap on the head. He scolded, "Loser? HMPH, if you don't understand, don't talk nonsense, okay? The sword Dao isn't that easy." The female disciple saw stars from the blow and cried out, "Ouch, that hurts." Su Changyu then imagined those warriors standing atop heavenly thunder pillars to preach their truths. The 4 lightning sword technique your senior brother practices is no loser technique. It's one of the top 10 techniques in Qingzhou. Back then, the Taoist of 4 seasons became famous throughout Qingzhou with this very set. Visualizing the image of 4 dragons, golden, azure, fire and green, soaring into the clouds together, he continued, "This is a technique of ultimate yang and rigidity, divided into the 4 seasons, spring, summer, autumn and winter. If one can master all 4, they can even summon the heavenly lightning of the 4 seasons." Su Changyu arched his eyebrows and squinted, adopting the persona of a learned Taoist. And each stage of the sword technique is divided into 4 minor realms: initial, proficient, great success, consummate, and finally the pinnacle. As he spoke, the female disciple followed up with interest. "That sounds really powerful. So which level are you at now, senior brother?" Su Changyu tilted his head back, looking smug. "I have already mastered the spring lightning sword, which consists of 18 sword moves." To his surprise, his junior sister looked unimpressed. "Ah, just spring lightning, and only 18 moves?" Su Changyu's face turned bright red with rage. He roared, "What do you mean just spring lightning? There are only 4 major realms in total. My progress would be considered exceptional anywhere in Qingzhou." The exceptional me. Then a progress chart of the 4 lightning sword technique appeared in his mind. Starting from himself, the spring lightning sword had reached 2 stars. The paths to the locked unawakened skills included the summer lightning sword, autumn lightning sword, winter lightning sword, and a hidden treasure of secret techniques. Su Changyu spoke incessantly. "It only took me 10 years to reach the proficient stage. I'll definitely reach great success in less than 10 more, and the pinnacle within 100 years. He stared into her face with bloodshot eyes and lowered his voice. Do you have any idea how strong I'll be then? Scared into avoiding his gaze, she replied. I understand, eldest senior brother. Then the female disciple asked with genuine curiosity, what if junior brother manages to comprehend sword intent on his own? What level of talent would that make him? This gave Su Changyu a jolt of surprise and confusion. Soon he burst into loud laughter, hands on his hips with a look of disdain. Ha ha, sword intent, junior sister, you really have a wild imagination. Su Changyu recalled the long sword that radiated dazzling golden light, a force so impactful that countless people couldn't even get close. He explained, in the sword Dao, sword techniques are only secondary. What truly matters is sword intent. The stronger the sword intent, the more any technique can turn the mundane into the miraculous. Even a casual thrust becomes terrifyingly powerful. He imagined a cultivator standing atop a high mountain, sword intent erupting in all directions, forcing everyone below to look up in awe. He continued, the three great chasms of sword intent are as difficult to cross as ascending to heaven. The first stage is endless sword intent. In all the 10 kingdoms, only one powerhouse has managed to even get half a foot through that door. He is known as the Sword Venerable Taishu, an honored guest of the 10 kingdoms. Hearing this, the little junior sister puffed out her cheeks and persisted. I'm saying what if he actually comprehends it? What level would that be? Su Changyu pointed a finger toward the sky, his expression turning cold. A cold smirk played on his lips as he said, utterly impossible. Never mind, junior brother, even the greatest genius Qingzhou has seen in 500 years couldn't comprehend endless sword intent. At that moment, Su Changyu was laboriously climbing the steps to the mountain summit. Before he even saw the boy, his eyebrows twitched in doubt. I'm here. I wonder if junior brother is even awake yet. However, seeing the other boy kneeling on the ground supporting himself with his hands while pressing his face against the sword mark, Su Changyu was struck with a sudden shock. In his eyes, Yi Bing was staring with massive dark circles under his eyes, fixated on the sword mark he had casually left 7 days ago. This display of willpower made Su Changyu's face turn pale. Cold sweat trickled down as he thought in a panic, holy crap, what's going on? How long has he gone without sleep to get dark circles like that? Looking at Yi Ping's wide, unblinking eyes, he guessed privately, did this guy really stare at this sword mark for an entire week? That thing was just a lie to trick you. Su Changyu tilted his head, feeling dizzy with self-reproach. This makes me look like even less of a human being. What should I do? The guilt is too heavy. After standing there for a long time watching Yi Ping, he felt a wave of pity. Poor kid. For the sake of the sect, I can only let you suffer. I'll work hard to make it up to you later. Suddenly, he heard a gasp. Yi Ping looked up, greeting Su Changyu with his lifeless panda eyes. Eldest senior brother, you're here? Su Changyu, going into full acting mode, immediately adjusted his pose to show off his perfect profile. He asked, how far have you progressed in your practice? Yi Bim stood up, staggering toward him, and answered with a foolish grin, I've comprehended it. It's all thanks to the opportunity you granted me, senior brother. However, before Yi Ping could finish, Su Changyu consoled him. Don't be discouraged. It's normal for an ordinary person to fail to comprehend it. After saying that, he froze, looking baffled. With a face contorted like a monkey-eating ginger, he blurted out, wait a minute, what did you just say? You comprehended it? Yi Ping's face was flushed with excitement. He cupped his hands in a respectful bow and confirmed with his head lowered. Yes, eldest senior brother, including this morning, I have comprehended a total of 400 sword moves. Su Changyu stared at him with flickering eyes, saying nothing as if processing Yi Ping's words. Inside, however, he was rolling on the floor laughing. He pointed at him mentally with disdain. 400 moves, do you think I've never practiced the sword? I just scratched that mark out randomly. Do you think I don't know what's in it? Su Changyu crossed his arms and exhaled, thinking with utter disbelief, this is going to be the death of me. However, seeing this, Yi Ping was bewildered. What does eldest senior brother's cold sneer mean? It felt like a fatal blow to him. Breaking into a cold sweat, he frowned and began to fill in the blanks himself. Is he laughing because I comprehended too few? 400 moves a day really isn't much, is it? I see. For a master like eldest senior brother, the techniques he possesses must number at least in the tens of thousands. The demon in Yi Ping's mind appeared again, deducing deeply. With personal instruction of ready-made knowledge plus the great opportunity he gave me before, anyone with even a bit of talent would surely comprehend thousands of moves a day. The more he thought, the more discouraged he became. 2 streaks of tears fell as he cried out in grievance. Sigh, it's all because I'm too useless. Suddenly, Su Changyu spoke up with a kind smile to encourage him. There's no need to lie. This sword technique is profound. It's normal to not comprehend it fully. I would never look down on you for that, however, Yi Ping stated with absolute certainty. I'm not lying. It really is 400 moves. This ignited a spark of anger in Su Changyu. His brow furrowed as he cursed inwardly. Just stop it already. No one likes someone who has no skill but insists on acting tough. Meanwhile, in Yi Ping's eyes, his eldest senior brother appeared exceptionally terrifying. he thought, trembling with fear. Does senior brother think I'm unworthy of comprehending these 400 sword moves? Yi Ping then twisted his fingers nervously, squinting as he tried to explain. Although my talent is mediocre, didn't I have the fortuitous opportunity you bestowed upon me earlier, senior brother? While 400 moves aren't many, I was still able to comprehend them. These words caused an uncomfortable black aura to emanate from Su Changyu. 400 moves aren't many, yet another person who looks down upon the way of the sword. At this moment, Su Changyu was truly starting to get angry. Although he wasn't a top-tier powerhouse, he had experienced plenty of the hardships common to ordinary people during his growth. Whether intentional or not, being mocked for slow progress was something that would make anyone feel uneasy. Radiating an unconcealed chill, he arched an eyebrow and spoke. Fine. Since that's the case, demonstrate the sword moves you've comprehended for me. He secretly decided that he had to teach the boy a lesson. It would be for the good of the youth's development. However, Yi Ping shouted yes without a moment's hesitation, which only served to irritate Su Changyu further. He thought to himself. He actually dared to agree? He's really going to be stubborn to the bitter end. It's going to be hard to save face in a moment. Take it as advice from a master of posturing. A moment later, the two stood atop a mountain peak, with rolling ranges stretching into the distance. Yi Ping lowered his stance, closing his eyes as he gathered golden spiritual energy into the long sword in his hand. Then he raised it vertically before him, a flash of golden light crossing both his eyes simultaneously. Yi Ping swiftly delivered a horizontal slash. The spiritual energy illuminated the surroundings. With golden light swirling in his eyes, he demonstrated what he had learned with a solemn expression. Every sword style he unleashed was accompanied by flickering sparks. The sword technique Yi Ping performed was incredibly fast, flowing like moving clouds and running water. His cold, cyan eyes were locked onto the space ahead. In the blink of an eye, he had already executed 36 styles. Each move was crisp and decisive, the sword momentum surging like a tide, his form following the blade like a shadow. A sharp killing intent was laid bare before Su Changyu. Su Changyu's face was grim as he silently watched Yi Ping's footwork and his sword hand. He clenched his fists, his gaze never leaving Yi Ping's dance for a second. Even the whistling wind in his ears couldn't make him blink. In reality, Su Changyu's heart had already turned to cold ashes. He didn't even bother to wipe the snot running from his nose, standing there dazed like a stunned goose. Yi Ping's sword strikes grew swifter and more ferocious. A blur of sword light followed his agile movements as he demonstrated before Su Changyu. Even after completing 36 forms, he showed no intention of stopping. His eyes blazed with an intense battle spirit, each move enough to strike fear into gods and ghosts alike. Suddenly, Yi Ping braced one hand on the ground and spun his legs through the air, taking the form of a great rock spreading its wings. By the 108th form, he was surrounded by dense layers of sword shadows and billowing dust which completely enveloped him at the center. He leaped into the air and struck downward, his sword falling like a soul-reaping bolt of heavenly thunder. A massive explosion erupted. Simultaneously, thunder suddenly roared in the heavens, and a terrifying bolt of golden heavenly thunder crashed down before Yi Ping. This left Su Changyu utterly shell-shocked. Before his eyes, countless electric arcs converged to form a thunder dragon, causing his pupils to contract and beads of sweat to roll down his stiff face. Then a fire dragon gradually condensed from within the heavenly thunder. It opened its massive maw and let out a defiant roar. Su Changyu was all too familiar with this sight. It was an image that had appeared in his dreams countless times. As the thunder dragon fully materialized, it radiated pink spiritual energy and crashed violently toward the point where Yi Ping's blade was aimed. The dragon's roar was deafening. Su Changyu stood frozen in place as if struck by lightning himself. He looked up at the descending pink radiance, thinking, this roar. While the fire dragon roared in the sky, Yi Ping continued to brandish his sword on the ground. Su Changyu marveled inwardly, recognizing this as the external manifestation of the four thunder sword techniques reaching the stage of great perfection. His greatest dream over the years had been to practice the spring thunder sword technique to great perfection. To hear a single legendary dragon's roar would make his life worth living, even if he died the next moment. Yet the kid before him had achieved it after practicing for only 7 days. His eyes widened and he stood agape, his heart filled with sheer horror. This is impossible, absolutely impossible. However, the shock was far from over. A green dragon abruptly manifested, its jagged maw gaping wide in the sky. Scant seconds later, another fresh dragon roar rang out. It was an azure thunder dragon, the very embodiment of condensed lightning. Su Changyu stared at it, unable to look away. The summer thunder sword had reached great perfection. Before it could even dissipate, the autumn thunder dragon followed close behind. Manifesting almost simultaneously, the golden and green dragons flew side by side, breathing out brilliant flashes of golden lightning. The dual dragons roared in unison. Both the summer and autumn thunder swords had reached great perfection at the same time. Such an occurrence was unheard of. Before Su Changyu's eyes, the fire dragon and the green dragon appeared together as Yi Ping executed his sword forms. At this point his momentum did not wane but instead accelerated. Yi Ping's figure gradually blurred in Su Changyu's vision, leaving behind only afterimages and the glowing trails of green and golden sword paths. Faster and faster he went, until the sword shadows transformed into streams of light like a sun wheel cutting through all of creation. Ultimately, it transformed into a true phantom. The golden sword chi gradually shifted into a deep blue, encircling Yi Ping at the center. The Winter Thunder Sword technique, the most powerful of the 4 Thunder Sword techniques, had also reached great mastery. An azure dragon's head tore through the sky and dove downward. Although this strike was only at the level of great mastery, it felt entirely different from the previous 3. With only its head visible, the azure dragon obscured the entire sky above Su Changyu. His fear deepened, his gaze grew frantic, and cold sweat poured down. Su Changyu felt as though winter had arrived and all life was being entombed in ice. The azure dragon was causing everything to freeze as snow began to fall silently. It wasn't until the 432nd move that Yi Ping finally stopped. He dropped to one knee with his other leg extended sideways, one hand braced on the ground and his sword pointing behind him in a perfect pose. The 7-day learning report performance had officially ended, leaving Su Changyu with a furrowed brow, mouth agape in wordless shock, and a face drenched in sweat. He stood dazed, staring at Yi Ping, who had already sheathed his sword, across from him. Yi Ping's face was swept by blue light, alternating between light and shadow, as if an endless killing intent was hidden within this freezing, snowy night. At this point, the 4 Thunder Sword techniques. Yi Ping had reached great perfection in all 4 techniques of spring, summer, autumn and winter. However, he remained motionless. Maintaining his closing posture, he reflected privately. No, something isn't right. I seem to be relying too much on the sword. A look of frustration appeared on his face as a dark aura began to emanate from him. Yi Ping muttered irritably, "The greatest form is formless, it gives life to all things. Nothingness is existence. Observe the object beyond the object, contemplate the self beyond the self. That's it. I've been limited by the sword." This left Su Changyu completely baffled, but suddenly his eyes widened, filled with a strange brilliance. Yi Ping exclaimed with pleasant surprise, "I think I understand. Senior brother, this is what you really wanted to tell me, isn't it?" These words left Su Changyu utterly bewildered, thinking, "What the hell are you talking about?" Without waiting for a response, Yi Ping pressed his fist together in front of him and continued, "Consider this. The sword of the commoner strikes at the neck and pierces the lungs, no different from a cockfight. But the sword of the Son of Heaven is governed by the 5 elements, opened by yin and yang, and takes all things in the world as its edge." As soon as he finished speaking, he pulled his hands apart, and at that exact moment, a brilliant golden light erupted between his hands, extending into a ribbon of radiance. Simultaneously, as Yi Ping unleashed a move, a thunderous boom exploded, the shockwave ruffling Su Changyu's robes and hair. Su Changyu swept his teeth, unable to believe it. He cursed inwardly. Holy crap, did he just gain another insight just by running through the moves? Is this a joke? Am I dreaming? Recalling the scene of the flora being covered in ice and snow, a thought flashed through Su Changyu's mind. If the Winter Thunder Sword just now brought a sense of destruction and ruin, then now, watching the withered wood continuously stretch out, he felt an entirely different aura, a power brimming with vitality, an air of revival. In that split second he felt as if he had traveled across 10,000 years of time. Before his eyes, a massive ancient tree towered upward. Its lush foliage emitted an emerald spiritual aura, filled with endless, inextinguishable life force. Su Changyu marveled inwardly. The energy here was surging like a boundless flowing spring. Su Changyu looked at the azure invisible sword before him, feeling as though this sword was the entire world itself, yet Yi Ping had managed to manifest it through a single moment of enlightenment. It even seemed as though he could cut down 10,000 soldiers with a mere wave of his hand. Simultaneously, as if to confirm Su Changyu's intuition, Yi Ping swung the sword shadow, carving a perfectly straight line through the forest that reached the horizon. Its energy rose like a power grid, making one afraid to approach. Observing his posture, Su Changyu's brow furrowed and his mouth hung open in disbelief. "Wait, hold on." Deep inside, his soul was nearly scared out of his body. With bloodshot eyes that were practically bulging out, he stammered incoherently. "No, could this be sword intent?" Su Changyu stared blankly at the fading golden spiritual power behind Yi Ping while that invisible sword remained held in his hand. However, the sword soon lost its shape, turning into a wisp of air that slipped from his palm. This left Yi Ping feeling utterly dejected. With a long face, he muttered, "How annoying! That feeling disappeared. I can't feel it at all anymore." In an instant, Yi Ping's attitude did a complete 180-degree turn. He hugged himself, panicking in a cold sweat. "This power is so terrifying, yet it only succeeded for a fleeting moment. As I thought, my talent is just too poor." These words were like a thunderclap, slapping Su Changyu hard across the face. He broke into a cold sweat, his eyes rolling and the corners of his mouth twitching. Feeling that life had lost its meaning, he stammered, "Talent too poor?" Imagining a figure standing above the masses, back straight at the peak of a high mountain, radiating a dazzling golden light while countless worshipful gazes looked up from below. Su Changyu thought, "I was lucky enough to see the Taishu Sword Sovereign once when I was young. which is why I chose the path of the sword so firmly. Back then, the sword sovereign didn't even use spiritual power. The sheer momentum of his sword strikes triggered phenomena almost exactly like my junior brother's just now. Comparing the two, Su Changyu felt their gazes were equally sharp and chilling. He marveled inwardly, this is absolutely supreme sword intent. He isn't just the top genius of the Jin state, he might even be the top genius of all 10 states. With this level of comprehension for sword techniques, even without spiritual power, he could reach the pinnacle of the sword world in the future with the help of artifacts and green talismans. Suddenly, Yi Ping spoke up, hoping to pass the assessment. Senior brother, I know the sword move I just realized is mediocre, but I will work twice as hard. I hope you won't be disappointed. To Su Changyu's ears, this apologetic tone felt like being executed by 1,000 cuts. His face turned deathly pale as he thought, who am I? Where am I? He lamented. In this lifetime, I probably can't even compare to your toe. But I absolutely cannot lose face. Such a peerless genius must not be allowed to leave. He had to remain composed and maintain his status. Then the best actor Su Changyu turned around, leaving a cool silhouette as he spoke. It is indeed quite mediocre, just average. However, his face was twisted like he had eaten a bitter gourd as he fought back tears. If you're mediocre, then what the hell am I? Yi Ping looked sorrowful, poking his index fingers together, thinking, as I thought. Suddenly, something caught Su Changyu's attention. He turned to look. Seeing a notebook lying on a rock nearby, Su Changyu asked, "What is this?" Yi Ping cast aside his sorrow and looked over. He walked over, picked up the notebook and said, "Reporting to senior brother, these are just some records of my insights during cultivation. They aren't worth mentioning." But Su Changyu leaned in with great interest, asking curiously, "Insight records, may I have a look?" Hearing this, Yi Ping stammered guiltily, I'm too embarrassed." Su Changyu picked up the notebook and flipped through the pages, his brow furrowed deeper with every turn, his mind feeling as if struck by lightning. Every page was recorded in incredible detail. The handwriting was dense and even radiated a golden spiritual aura. Su Changyu read, "In the first 50 forms of spring thunder, senior brother wanted to teach me the principle that white sand will eventually turn into black sand during nirvana." The elegant calligraphy seemed to dance in the air, carrying every earnest annotation Yi Ping had made during the first 100 forms of spring thunder. "Senior brother wants to tell me the principle that all things are interconnected, and that there is no above or below. In the first 50 forms of summer thunder, great straightness seems crooked, great skill seems clumsy, and great eloquence seems like a stutter." Reading the characters in the notes, Su Changyu felt a shock as if he were looking at the stars for the first time. He recognized every single word in the records, but when they were strung together, they were as mysterious and profound as a vast galaxy. Su Changyu stood opposite Yi Ming, studying every character in a daze, even developing the illusion that he was being preached to. As the gems of wisdom continued to appear, Su Changyu's brow was locked in a deep frown. He stared at every word, and though he couldn't understand them, he felt an overwhelming sense of awe. Then, with a blank expression and drenched in cold sweat, he asked, questioning his very existence, "I said all these things." Thinking Su Changyu was about to get angry, Yi Ming quickly defended himself. "I wouldn't dare, it's just my own arrogance, recording only a mere tip of the iceberg. It surely isn't even a 10,000th as profound as what senior brother truly intended to teach, right?" This time, Su Changyu was completely petrified. His jaw nearly hitting his chest, he muttered in terror, "Why can't I understand a single word? How on earth did you realize all this, you blockhead? Did you realize the great Tao out of thin air? What kind of monster are you?" Su Changyu then recalled how he had resolved to practice the sword years ago. Even gritting his teeth through bitter training, he lamented, "I, Su Changyu, have meditated and practiced bitterly for over a decade and have only just reached the entry level of spring thunder, yet this newbie junior brother. In just 7 days he practiced the entire set of 4 thunder sword techniques directly to great perfection." Subconsciously he had already broken down, kneeling on the ground with tears flowing like a river, feeling desolate and miserable. The kid had even touched upon that breathtaking infinite sword intent. What even is this life? "I'm sorry." On the surface, however, Su Changyu maintained a cold facade. He turned to leave, leaving the dazed Yi Ping behind, and instructed, "Fine, continue your meditation. I'll be back in a few days." Seeing this, Yi Ping felt incredibly lost, standing frozen like a block of wood while his mind raced. Looking at senior brother's expression, things seem a bit bad. Could it be that he thinks my talent is too poor and plans to kick me out? Terrified by his own thoughts, Yi Ping shed 2 lines of tears and fell into a state of panic, scratching his head and screaming, "Please don't. I finally found a place willing to take me in." He remembered the scene at the spirit root testing platform, where everyone had looked at him with contempt, and his heart filled with sorrow. For half a year he had participated in over 50 immortal ascension assemblies, but no sect, large or small, was willing to take him. They even mocked him. "Immortal spirit root, I suggest you stop dreaming about cultivation. It's a complete waste of time. Give up early so you don't waste any more effort." Yi Ping rolled his eyes like an underdog at the mercy of others, lamenting, "Without a sect to take me in, I can't exactly realize the great Tao just by looking at the stars, can I?" Then his willpower ignited, and his determination burned like fire. He panted heavily like a bull preparing to charge, stating firmly, "No matter what, I must seize this opportunity. I can't let go. Besides, everyone in this sect is a peerless master. Go for it, Yiping, you can do this." Time slipped away. Elsewhere in the Qingyun Sect, at the sect leader's residence, a small cottage built on the mountain peak and surrounded by mist. White cranes soared through the sky. Taoist Taihua sat by the window, holding a teacup and looking out, remarking happily, "The weather has been quite nice lately." Sipping tea and admiring the flowers, it was truly pleasant. Suddenly a scream like a slaughtered pig rang out. "Master, master, it's bad." The shock made him jump, his face turning pale as his hair stood on end and cold sweat poured down. Su Changyu stood at the door, out of breath, hands on his knees, urgently reporting, "Master, something big happened, a huge thing." Hearing this, Taoist Taihua regained his composure and asked, "Changyu, what's with the panic? This doesn't look like you." His face was as red as a beet and his expression was full of terror as he spoke. "Master, your dream might have actually come true. Our Qingyun Sect has finally," when Su Changyu added, "produced a dragon." Taoist Taihua was so shocked his eyes rolled back, his eyes were wide, unable to believe his ears. Taihua Taoist lunged from his chair as if his backside were on fire. "A breakthrough? Changyu, what on earth do you mean by that?" he asked urgently. Su Changyu's expression was grim, his eyes sharp as he recounted what he had just witnessed. The new junior brother started from scratch, and in just 7 days he has brought the entire Four Thunder Sword technique to the stage of great perfection. Upon hearing this, Taihua Taoist was utterly bewildered. After the initial shock wore off, he stood there dazed, lamenting, "Good heavens, this is a true genius." But a second later, his face flushed crimson, his eyes widened, and he roared at his eldest disciple. "Changyu, this is no matter to joke about. If you're lying, you'll have to swallow needles." Seeing this, Su Changyu dodged the flying spittle, and asserted firmly that the celestial phenomenon in the sky earlier was precisely because the Fourth Thunder Sword technique had reached mastery. Had his master not seen it? At that moment, Taihua Taoist froze, his soul seemingly departing his body. He spoke blankly like a machine. "I thought some big shot was leveling up nearby." At the time he had been standing leisurely, admiring the dragon roar phenomenon in the sky. Now he was stammering, unable to believe it was little Yiping. After a moment, Taihua Taoist's attitude and expression performed a total 180-degree reversal. His eyes welled with tears, yet they sparkled with pure bliss as he shouted, "A genius, we've found a genius. Our Qingyun Taoist sect finally has a genius." But in the blink of an eye, Taihua Taoist froze again, his eyes rolling back as he gasped for air. Terrified, Su Changyu grabbed him by the collar and shook him. "Hey master, calm down, don't get so excited that you collapse, master." It took a while before Taihua Taoist's drifting consciousness was pulled back from the clouds. He grabbed a scalding teapot he had barely sipped from and poured the whole thing over his head, muttering to himself that he needed to stay calm or he'd lose control. The fortune teller said I'd face a great tribulation at 500 years old. Watching Taihua Taoist use a towel to wipe his face and head to clear his mind, Su Changyu spoke up, "But master, if we keep him in our sect, will we be hindering his future?" However, the master comforted him. "Changyu, you worry too much. Yi Bing attended over 50 immortal ascension assemblies, and not a single soul was willing to take him. That we took an interest in him is his good fortune. It's a win-win for both him and our sect." Despite the water still dripping down his face, making him look utterly disheveled, Taihua Taoist's gaze was firmer than ever. He continued, "Furthermore, cultivators value affinity. Others didn't choose him, yet we did. That speaks of destiny. Have you ever considered whether he would truly get whatever he wanted in another sect? Setting aside the jealousy of fellow disciples, there is the cutthroat intrigue between sects. Assassinating geniuses to stunt a rival's growth is a common occurrence. Changyu, stop being such a bleeding heart." Within moments, Taihua Taoist's face was the very picture of righteousness. The Sect Master of Qingyun Sect stood there, radiating an aura of integrity. He said, "Your master is not a greedy man. Once the sect ascends to the 3rd or 2nd rank, I will tell him the truth. At that time, whether he stays or leaves will be his own choice." How was that for a plan? Swayed by Taihua Taoist's light of righteousness, Su Changyu's mind finally came around. He answered as if hypnotized, "I understand, master. I shall follow your instructions." He then heard the master declare, "Let it be so. Remember, you must never let the secret slip." Time flew by, and soon it was the next afternoon at the Qingyun Sect. Taihua Taoist sat on a stone stool in the courtyard, resting with his eyes closed. He took a sip of tea, soaking in the warm sunlight. Suddenly, Su Changyu came charging out of nowhere, wailing at the gate like a stuck pig. "Master, master, this is bad." Startled, Taihua Taoist jerked so hard he spat out a mouthful of tea. Su Changyu was drenched in sweat, his face pale, swaying as if he couldn't stand straight. He stammered, Something big has happened again." Taihua Taoist sat there like a wooden statue, his body stiff and his eyes wide, wearing an expression that asked, "Who am I and where am I?" Then panic seized him. He grabbed a bundle, ready to flee for his life. As he ran, he called out, "I'm going into hiding. I'm leaving the sect in your hands, Changyu." But Su Changyu managed to raise his hand and shout an explanation just in time. "Master, it's not a debt collector, it's something else." Hearing this, Taihua Daoist stopped in his tracks. With a dark, displeased look he turned back to demand what else it could be. Then he pivoted and delivered a sharp kick to Su Changyu's hip, scolding, "Then what are you panicking for? You nearly scared the soul right out of me." After a moment, the courtyard where Taihua Daoist lived regained its tranquility. He resumed his leisurely pose. Holding his teacup, he asked with a sidelong glance, "Out with it. What big thing happened? Are we being evicted?" Seeing Su Changyu hold out a piece of paper, the master said, "You'd better see for yourself." Taihua Daoist held the notice high, squinting as he read. As of today, the Qingyun Sect Affairs Office will conduct investigations into minor sects to prevent reckless disciple selection and fraudulent practices. All sects are required to submit 10 low-grade spirit stones within 2 months to prove their legitimacy. After reading it, the leisure vanished from Taihua Daoist's face, replaced by a cold sweat. His face went as black as a charcoal grill. His lip twitched as he blurted out, "What?" He immediately flipped the table, his fury erupting like a wildfire. "This is outrageous, extorting spirit stones for no reason and bullying the weak. I'm going to the capital to file a complaint." To Su Changyu, however, this was all just an act. He stared blankly, speechless. Su Changyu explained the economics. In the cultivation world, 1 copper coin buys a flatbread. 10,000 coppers equal 100 taels of silver or 1 tael of gold. He then thought of that blue spirit stone everyone dreamed of. He continued, saying it took 1,000 taels of gold to equal just 1 spirit stone. Taihua Daoist froze once more, the focus leaving his aging eyes as he let out a pathetic wail. The entire Qingyun Sect would have to go without food or drink for a full year just to save up those 10 spirit stones. Watching his master sit there scratching his head and whimpering, Su Changyu calmed down slightly and began to check the accounts. "Master, don't panic yet. How many spirit stones does the sect have in total right now?" This question made Taihua Daoist even more sheepish. He hemmed and hawed. "Oh well," then, face flushed with shame, he held up 7 fingers and spoke in a voice as quiet as a mosquito. Is there about that much left?" Seeing this, Su Changyu grinned and replied, 7 spirit stones? That's enough then." But Taihua Daoist guiltily corrected him. "How could that be possible?" Su Changyu's expression froze. 70 taels of gold?" he asked incredulously. "That's difficult, but if we all chip in suddenly." Taihua Daoist denied it was 70. By now Su Changyu's face had darkened considerably. He frowned and muttered, "Sect Master, please don't tell me it's only 70 taels of silver." Even then Taihua Daoist turned his face away. Unable to look him in the eye, the master confessed the truth. It was 70 copper coins. This revelation was like a bolt from the blue, striking Su Changyu right in the skull. His pupils contracted as he roared in terror. 70 copper coins? Fuming so hard his hair stood on end, Su Changyu shouted, "How is that possible? No matter how down on our luck we are still a legitimate sect." Taihua Daoist confirmed with a miserable face that this was indeed the reality. He then slumped into his chair, despondently recounting the tragic tale of how they were cleaned out. It went like this. The sect originally had some savings, but he felt that keeping silver on hand was a waste. He had happened to hear about a new thing called an Immortal Cultivation Fund. Hearing this wonderful name for the first time, Su Changyu was stunned, beginning to question his very existence. "An Immortal Cultivation Fund?" he echoed in disbelief. Taihua Daoist recalled the scene of people frantically vying to invest their money. He explained that they said if you deposited money you'd get dividends every month, and large ones at that. He had fought hard just to snag an investment slot that ordinary people couldn't even get. It didn't take long for the investors' dreams to shatter like a thunderclap. Everyone was wailing and screaming, "Give me my money back, give it back." "That was my life savings," Taihua Daoist lamented. "Who would have thought that while I was eyeing his interest he was eyeing my principal?" Within days he took the money and vanished. Like a greedy child who had been tricked out of his candy, Taihua Daoist wept, reaching out for comfort. "Changyu, your master was swindled. Quick, give me a hug and comfort me." Su Changyu simply wore a look of utter speechlessness, his heart full of curses. 70 coppers compared to 100 taels of gold. They were finished. They might as well just disband. Su Changyu was certain that this time the Qingyun Daoist sect was truly doomed. However, Taihua Daoist pumped his fist, forcing a look of hypocritical determination. "Regardless, your master will take responsibility. If all else fails, I'll have to take the lesser path and make a trip to the Jinglin Mountains. We finally have a genius. I absolutely cannot let the sect collapse." But Su Changyu reminded him with a dark face, "Stop dreaming." Suddenly, on the mountain peak near them, a majestic bolt of lightning soared into the sky, startling them both into looking. Seeing the terrifying phenomenon in the sky, Taihua Daoist began to stammer in fear. "Ah!" Su Changyu's brow furrowed, his gaze solemn. After observing closely, he shouted, "That's the direction of Junior Brother's quarters. What happened?" Looking at the heavenly thunder roaring from the opposite peak, Su Changyu cried out in alarm, "What was that in the sky just now? Could it be that Junior Brother has had another breakthrough?" Beside him, Taihua Daoist's face was grim. He waved his hand dismissively in disbelief. "Impossible. Not even a genius could trigger something like that. It must have just been a coincidental clap of thunder. Don't overthink it." He then turned and went into the house. Picking up the bundle from the table, he said, Changyu, I must go down the mountain to see if I can borrow some spirit stones. Since a dragon has appeared, I will never let this sect disband no matter the cost. I'm leaving things here to you. Most importantly, take good care of your junior brother. Teach him well, and for heaven's sake don't teach him any nonsense." Su Changyu immediately bowed with his hands clasped, accepting the order. "Yes, master, you can rest easy." Time passed, and 7 days later, by the edge of a cliff, Yi Bum was still diligently practicing his swordplay. He hadn't stopped for a single moment. He leaped into the air and swung his sword forward, the sword chi transforming into energy like a giant bird spreading its wings. Drenched in sweat, Yi Pim gritted his teeth and persevered, his sword strikes jagged and incredibly sharp. As Su Changyu approached, he found Yi Pim so immersed in his practice that he hadn't noticed his arrival at all. The sword shadows he cast flickered with golden light. The more Su Changyu watched, the more alarmed he became. His eyes nearly rolled back in shock. It's only been 7 days, and he's already learned so many new sword techniques. At this rate, won't he reach the pinnacle of every style in just a few days? The phenomenon from before was indeed caused by his breakthrough. If I didn't have to, I really wouldn't want to see him. The pressure is just too much. Suddenly, Yi Ping sensed Su Changyu's presence. He stopped his movements, turned to look, and then bowed politely and respectfully. "Eldest senior brother, you're here?" Seeing this, Su Changyu gestured for him to rise. "At ease. How is the practice coming along?" Yi Ping gripped his sword hilt, a tip pointing at the ground. His eyes looked somewhat dejected, and he couldn't bring himself to look Su Changyu in the eye. "These 1,460 sword forms. I have gained a thorough understanding of them all. Although the process was a bit slow and bumpy, I suppose I've succeeded." Hearing this, Su Changyu wept inwardly, his world spinning. "You've understood them all. Even though I had high hopes for you, I still underestimated you. I'm so jealous." On the surface, however, he struggled to remain calm. Adopting a lofty demeanor, he pointed to the sky and instructed, "Little Yi Ping, listen well. Even if your sword forms have reached the pinnacle, that is merely the beginning. Beyond that lie sword chi and sword intent. Sword forms are tedious, but the so-called sword momentum means one sword replaces 10,000, merging all forms into a single strike." Su Changyu bluffed and bragged with a forehead full of sweat, acting as if he were the god of swords himself. "At the very least, until you condense your sword momentum, you cannot be called a sword cultivator. Do you understand?" Yi Ping felt a bit discouraged upon hearing this. He tilted his head and thought gloomily, "Oh, I don't even count as a sword cultivator yet." Meanwhile, Su Changyu groaned inwardly. That bit of nonsense should be enough. Otherwise, with this kid's talent, he'd probably figure it all out in another 3 days. Suddenly, Yi Ping's face flushed slightly. With wide eyes, he asked curiously and shyly, "Ah, right, what realm have you reached now, senior brother?" Under the sunlight, Su Changyu tilted his chin up, gazing into the distance with a misty look in his eyes. "Me," he thought. He then replied, "I have little talent." He puffed out his chest, struck a pose with a hand to his forehead, and said with a self-satisfied squint, "I have only just stepped into the first stage of the legendary supreme sword path, the infinite sword intent." Inwardly, Su Changyu was delighted. "Haha, this bragging feels absolutely amazing." At the same time, Yi Ping's eyes lit up. Looking at his idol, he opened his mouth and marveled excitedly to himself. "Wow, sword intent, infinite sword intent. Just the name sounds incredibly powerful, as expected of eldest senior brother. He really is a hidden master. I'm following him for life." But Su Changyu wasn't done. He continued to act profound, switching into full scammer mode. Only after mastering sword momentum can one enter the Supreme Realm. The Supreme Realm is divided into 3 stages, the first being infinite sword intent. Don't be fooled by it being only the first stage. Even just stepping into this realm is enough to dominate the 10 kingdoms. Hearing this, Yi Ping couldn't help but gasp. "That is incredible." Suddenly, Yi Ping seemed to realize something. Cold sweat poured down as he clutched his chest in shock. "Wait a minute," he thought. "Doesn't that mean eldest senior brother is currently the number 1 in the 10 kingdoms? I knew he was an expert, but I never imagined he was on such a level." His jaw dropped in amazement. In his heart, he already revered Su Changyu as a god. If he studied under him, could he reach the level of being number 2 in the 10 kingdoms? A carp leaping over the dragon gate? Yi Ping never expected he'd see this day. It was as if the smoke of good fortune was rising from his ancestral graves. He then cupped his hands and shouted with excitement, "I will surely do my best to catch up to you, senior brother. I must comprehend the infinite sword intent in this lifetime. If I ever become famous throughout the world, I will never forget your kindness." Hearing this, Su Changyu turned his face away, wanting to cry but finding no tears. He felt incredibly bitter, grumbling to himself, "Say no more, say no more. My heart is already completely pickled with envy." Meanwhile, Yi Ping looked up at the sky, marveling at his good fortune and muttering to himself that it felt like a dream. Just a few days ago, he was a commoner struggling to make ends meet. He never expected to have mastered the sect's sword techniques. It was truly unbelievable. He stood at the mountain peak, gazing at the golden sunset on the horizon. Moved by the scene, he recited a poem. The evening glow reflects on the Qingyun pavilion, while the distant Heng peaks are dyed in crimson shadows. I wish to cultivate the way of the sword in Qingzhou, dining at dawn and dusk upon proud Heaven Peak. Beside him, Su Changyu was dumbstruck. Looking at the sunny youth before him, he asked, "The Sect Master mentioned that you were a scholar before coming up the mountain?" Yi Ping replied, "In a sense, though I never achieved any official titles, I have a keen interest in literature and painting." Hearing this, Su Changyu plotted internally and then suggested cheerfully, "Then why don't you paint a portrait for me?" Once little Yi Ping truly made a name for himself in the future, wouldn't this painting be the perfect bragging material? He visualized himself boasting with his chest out. "See this, a painting made specifically for me by the #1 sword cultivator in the Great Jin dynasty. Hee, eat your hearts out." He felt he was being incredibly clever. However, Yi Ping hesitated, pointing at his own face as if questioning his life choices. "Painting? Well, all right if it turns out poorly. Please do not laugh at me, senior brother." In his previous life, Yi Ping had joined a painting club specifically to pursue the goddess of his heart. Back then, full of youthful vigor, he had buried himself in practice for 3 years until he finally mastered the craft. But when he took his artwork to present it to his goddess, he was petrified halfway there. He saw his curvaceous goddess running off with a rich heir wearing a gold chain as thick as a dog's leash. After a profound existential crisis, realizing that even painting couldn't save a lonely dog, Yi Ping had collapsed on the ground weeping uncontrollably. Back to the present, a moment later, Yi Ping produced an easel from somewhere and stood before his eldest senior brother ready to begin. The best actor, Su Changyu, knew exactly which angle was his most flattering, and had already struck a perfect profile pose. He leisurely observed his junior brother, who was focused and gripping his brush under the setting sun, thinking to himself, "This kid is actually quite handsome when he's serious. He even captures a bit of my own divine spirit." After a while, a sweat-drenched Yi Ping handed over a scroll. Looking up shyly, he said, "Senior brother, it's finished. It's not very good, please forgive me." Su Changyu took the scroll and comforted him. "Don't worry, let me have a look first." However, the moment he looked down at the painting, his eyes widened in horror, his entire body freezing in place as he let out a scream at the painting. In the frame, Su Changyu stood on the grass, sword in hand, gazing at the warm sun. Every posture and detail in the painting was so lifelike that to Su Changyu's eyes it seemed to leap off the paper like a scene from a movie. The more he looked, the more astonished he became, eventually finding himself at a loss for words. No language could express his current state of mind. Looking at the sky through Yi Ping's brushstrokes, the setting sun dyed the horizon crimson. The Qingyun mountain range resembled the Penglai immortal realm, and the flora was so realistic it was hard to distinguish from the truth. The ears of rice seemed to sway with the wind, leaving Su Changyu deeply moved. The handling of certain details in particular made it appear even more authentic. He looked at the version of himself in the painting, eyes slightly closed, expression indifferent, and offered a silent critique. But what drew the eye most was that despite being only a side profile, it captured the sharp, cold, and powerful aura of a sword immortal. Su Changyu stared blankly at the radiant, golden-hued work, almost feeling as though the figure within could step out at any moment. His imagination ran wild, picturing his painted self raising a fist and delivering a heavy blow to the viewer's chest. After a long silence, Su Changyu finally spoke to praise Yi Ping, saying the painting was quite good and indeed impeccable. If he had to nitpick one flaw, it was that it failed to fully capture his elder brother's handsomeness. He added that this wasn't a lack of skill, but simply because he was far too handsome to be captured. Hearing this rare praise from Su Changyu, Yi Ping was overjoyed. He laced his fingers together, his face flushing with delight as he replied, "Thank you for the compliment, senior brother. I have always wanted to repay you for your guidance. This painting is just a small token of my gratitude." Suddenly, Su Changyu noticed something unusual on the painting and let out a startled cry. Indeed, at the end of the painting was a red seal that boldly read 4 characters. Layman Qinglian. He looked over with a face full of confusion, thinking, "Layman Qinglian, this kid certainly knows how to show off, even coming up with a formal moniker for himself already." Just then, the Taihua Taoist's voice transmission shook the air like a thunderclap. "Changyu, I have thought of a way to save the sect. Come back quickly. Come back." Receiving the message, Su Changyu glanced toward his master's courtyard, wondering, "Master found a solution? For that much silver?" He rolled up the scroll and hurriedly said to Yi Ping before leaving, "I'm taking this painting." "Thank you," Yi Ping replied politely. Such a small matter wasn't worth mentioning. Meanwhile, Su Changyu was still fretting over the sect's affairs. Things had come to this. What kind of turning point could there possibly be? At that same moment, in a location far from the Qingyun Sect at the Sun Sword Sect, one of the 3 major sects of Qingzhou, a fire dragon roared toward the heavens, piercing through the spiritual clouds and diving down with a piercing gaze. At the summit of the Sword Enlightenment Cliff, the lightning energy dropped by the fire dragon severed the mountainside, causing the cultivators at the foot of the mountain to look up in shock. One disciple marveled, wide-eyed. As expected of the 4 Seasons ancestor, a casual sword strike is truly terrifying. A woman beside him shot him a mocking glance and scoffed, "Cut the chatter, why else would everyone be sitting here? Do the sword marks of ordinary swordsmen deserve to be meditated upon by geniuses like us? Just as she finished speaking, a bolt of heavenly lightning suddenly fell, striking right next to the startled disciple. As rubble flew, a young man looked up and shouted, "I've realized it. I finally understand. This young master has finally attained enlightenment." Standing behind the two who had just been talking, he roared toward the sky, boasting that the great perfection stage was nothing more than this. The man who had been praising the elder was stunned and cried out, "Heavens, senior brother Shu Hang actually did it, and it's the great perfection of the spring thunder sword, so strong." The woman's attitude did a complete 180-degree turn as she began to flatter him profusely. The Four Seasons Taoist had once said, "Even for a genius, reaching great perfection takes at least 3 years, yet senior brother Shu Hang only took 1. Truly worthy of being one of the top 10 sword geniuses of Qingzhou. Such talent is beyond our reach." Not far away, several elders looked toward Shu Hang and the other cultivators still sitting in meditation. A young man smiled and cupped his hands in flattery. "To recruit such a genius, senior brother Mingjin truly has a keen eye for talent. Congratulations this time at the Qingzhou Sword Assembly." Shu Hang might just take first place. Mingjin was overjoyed upon hearing this and grinned, saying, "Ha, it's nothing really, it's just great perfection, it doesn't count for much." Seeing this, the other man continued his flattery. "Senior brother Mingjin is too humble." Suddenly, a cold, disdainful snort came from the side. A man with hair as messy as a horse's mane glanced at Mingjin and mocked, "Qingzhou is full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. It's a bit too early to talk about first place." Mingjin didn't take offense, instead closing his eyes and calmly countering, "True, Elder Chen is quite right, how could it be Hunger's turn? Just like his own disciples, though they've only just scratched the surface after a year, they must be so confident that they purposely let Hunger go ahead of them. That's clearly why they haven't broken through yet." Stunned where it hurt, Elder Chen's anger flared. He glared back with a fierce look and shouted, "You brat, you dare mock me?" Seeing the atmosphere grow tense, the young man nearby laughed to smooth things over. All right, brothers, don't be angry. We're all on the same side. Saying he'll be first is indeed a bit of an exaggeration. But the Sect Master has issued an order this time. We must make the top 10 no matter what." This news came like a bolt from the blue. Elder Chen and Mingjin both turned their heads in confusion and asked, "Oh, why?" The youth pointed toward the sky and said with a solemn expression, "You two may not know since you just came out of seclusion, but those who make the top 10 this time will receive a token for the Taishuan Sword Tower." This reward indeed piqued the interest of both Elder Chen and Mingjin, their eyes widening. Imagining that 8-story pagoda burning under the golden light, the man continued, "I presume I don't need to explain what it means to enter the Taishuan Sword Tower and pass its trials?" Upon hearing this, Mingjin was filled with fighting spirit. He clenched his fist and laughed wildly. "Haha, heaven is on my side. This time my disciple and I will surely claim a spot in the top 10. Please rest assured, Sect Master." Elder Chen couldn't help but throw cold water on him again. "HMPH, don't get overconfident. If a disciple from some nameless small sect beats you to it, you'll lose a lot of face." However, Mingjin and the younger junior brother clutched their stomachs and laughed uncontrollably. "Fine, if a disciple from outside the 3 major sects actually manages to beat Hunger, I'll not only empty your chamber pot for a year, I'll do it while standing on my head." Meanwhile, at the Qingyun Sect Master's residence, the afterglow of the setting sun was exceptionally warm. Taihua Taoist had laid out a pile of ancient-looking trinkets on the table for Su Changyu to see. Witnessing this, Su Changyu's face darkened and he asked suspiciously, This is the money-making method you mentioned?" A pile of scrap. Various tea sets, wine gourds, tokens, and other unknown objects were piled before the eyes of the eldest disciple of the Qingyun Sect. Looking at these items, Su Changyu was instantly petrified. Feeling as if his body were about to crack, he cried out in a daze, "This scrap is your solution? How much money can you get for this pile of junk?" Taihua Taoist squinted and puckered his lips, refusing to admit it. "This is called pawning. These are the treasures from the bottom of our sect's coffers. Tell me what part of this is junk. Your master truly couldn't think of any other way. Let's just treat a dead horse as if it were alive." Sensing his master wanted to drag him down with him, Su Changyu turned to flee, shouting in shame, "I'm not going. I don't want to lose face. Pawning this stuff is too humiliating." But Taihua Taoist grabbed him by the shoulder and pleaded, "Good disciple, help your master just this once, the very last time." Suddenly, he saw the scroll in Su Changyu's hand and asked in confusion, What's this?" Hearing it was a gift from the junior brother, Su Changyu tried to stop him, but before he could finish, Taihua Taoist had already snatched the scroll and run off. "The sect is about to disappear and you still have the heart for art. Take it to be pawned along with the rest." "It's not worth anything, you old geezer. Give it back." Su Changyu shouted angrily as he gave chase. Time passed and the farce came to an end. Early the next morning at the town's pawn shop, the second manager was all smiles, opening his arms in greeting. "Welcome to our humble shop. Please come in, exalted immortals." Looking at Taihua Taoist and Su Changyu, he rubbed his hands flatteringly and asked, "Are you two buying or selling?" He heard the Sect Master of Qingyun Sect reply, "Selling. It's all good stuff." Immediately, before even looking at the contents of the bag, the second manager beamed like a flower and flattered them. Of course one can tell at a glance that you two are no ordinary men. Come, let me feast my eyes. Even without looking, I can guarantee these are top-grade items. But when he opened the bag and saw it was full of tattered garbage-like junk, the second manager felt his vision go dark, his face turned ashen, and he cried out, questioning his very existence. Taihua Taoist had even brought out several pictures of sexy beauties to pawn. The second manager screamed, "What kind of junk is this? Why is there even smut like this?" Seeing the drawings, he turned beet red and backed away as if he had seen a hidden projectile. Suddenly, the second manager cried out in confusion, "Heavens, could this be Ling Yuanyuan's limited edition photo album?" Taihua Taoist was startled and rushed forward to explain, "Wait, that's the wrong one, that's not for sale." He blushed awkwardly as he stuffed the album into his sleeve, his eyes darting around. "Anything else is fine, but this treasure is not for sale even if the sect collapses." Seeing this, Su Changyu took the opportunity to demand, "Master, lend that to me later." This made Taihua Taoist even more embarrassed, and he hurriedly agreed, "Fine, fine, fine." Afterward, Taihua Taoist shamelessly began to haggle with the manager. "For everything combined, I'll give you a discount, only 10 gold taels, what do you think?" The second manager's face turned blue upon hearing this, and he roared dizzily, "10 gold taels for this pile of trash? Have you gone mad from poverty?" Taihua Taoist flew into a rage at this, grabbing a piece of tattered cloth and shouting, "What trash? Do you even know quality? Look closely at the material of this cushion. This is made of golden silkworm silk. Selling it to you is my loss." But the second manager coldly waved him away. "Then please grant that great bargain to another shop." Taihua Taoist changed his expression faster than turning a page, smiling as he offered a price. "Let's be friends. How about you take it all for 8 taels and 2 cents? The second manager still refused. Taihua Taoist's face turned bright red as he held out his hand and shouted, 5 taels, it can't be any less, and I'm really going elsewhere." Su Changyu sighed beside him. He used the scroll to cover his face and whispered, "This is too humiliating, let's just go, master." But the item in his hand caught the second manager's eye. The manager immediately stepped forward and pointed to the scroll, signaling, "Could I take a look at this painting?" Su Changyu handed it over, unsure what to do. The painting, HMPH of course. The second manager took it carefully and remarked, "Siang Zan paper, you two are too much, you clearly aren't short on money, so why are you making fun of our shop?" This caught Taihua Taoist's attention and his heart skipped a beat. "Is this painting paper very expensive?" Opening the scroll and observing the material, the second manager confirmed, "Indeed, it is Siang Zan paper. Just this sheet of paper alone is worth over 10 gold taels." He then noticed the signature at the bottom and cried out, his eyes nearly popping out of his head. The second manager thought in a daze while gesturing for his assistant Xiao Luo to come over, whispering in his ear, "Xiao Luo, come here quickly. I have something to tell you." Their mysterious behavior left Taihua Taoist completely bewildered. He was utterly confused. He stared at the manager and his disciple whispering in the corner, looking extremely nervous. "Over there?" Xiao Luo asked in shock. "Second manager, are you sure?" To which he replied in a trembling voice, "There's no mistake, absolutely no mistake." Soon, the second manager returned to Taihua Taoist with a complete change in attitude. He squinted and suggested, "I am terribly sorry, but we need to ask the head manager to come and take a look. Could you two wait for a moment?" Taihua Taoist and Su Changyu were stunned by this attitude and replied mechanically, Sure." An hour later, the second manager returned, happily holding the scroll as he discussed. The head manager said that anyone with the eye to purchase such a piece is certainly no novice. "Please stop teasing us, let's speak plainly. Give us an honest price." Hearing this, Su Changyu denied it in confusion. "What collection? That was just the junior disciple." Before he could finish, his mouth was covered by Taihua Taoist, who scolded him, "Shut up." Then Taihua Taoist held up 5 fingers and said calmly to the manager, "Fine, since that's the case, we won't play with you anymore. We want this much. If you agree, then it's a deal. If not, we're leaving immediately." Taihua Taoist was secretly delighted, calculating to himself, based on their performance just now, they definitely misunderstood something. Now is the time to ask for a steep price. It might even be possible to fleece him for 50 silver taels. Lucky I reacted quickly. The second manager rubbed his temples, his brow furrowed as if in great difficulty, letting out a low hum of contemplation. Beside them, Su Changyu snapped back to his senses and pulled Taihua Taoist aside to whisper, "Master, you're being too greedy. Who would spend 50 taels on this painting?" Just as he was certain the man would refuse, Taihua Taoist calmly claimed this was called gamesmanship. Suddenly, the second manager sighed and said, as if having finally made up his mind, "All right, 5,000 taels it is, deal." Hearing this, Taihua Taoist thought his tactic had succeeded. In a fit of ecstasy, he boasted to Su Changyu, "See that? This is gamesmanship. You've got a lot to learn, kid." But he immediately realized something was off. Struck as if by lightning, he asked in a daze, "Wait, how much did you just say?" The second manager squinted uneasily, held up 5 fingers and confirmed in confusion, 5,000 taels. "Wasn't that the price you suggested?" Taihua Taoist and Su Changyu's expressions darkened. They felt almost insulted. "Are you making fun of us?" they demanded. This terrified the second manager, who hurriedly explained, "Why would you say that, exalted immortals? My shop is open for business. I wouldn't dare crack such a joke." Su Changyu was already frozen in shock, tears nearly welling up in his eyes from pure disbelief. A painting the junior brother had casually tossed together was worth 5,000 taels. What on earth was going on? He glanced at his silent, grim-faced master and urgently urged him via voice transmission. "Sect Master, what are you waiting for? Agree quickly, hurry up. What if he changes his mind? Take the money and run. The sect is saved." To his surprise, Taihua Daoist's gaze sharpened. He squinted and said, "I'm terribly sorry, but I think you may have misunderstood. My meaning was 50,000 taels." The moment the words were spoken, Su Changyu was utterly speechless. He rolled his eyes and screamed internally, "What, old man, have you gone insane?" That's the end of this episode. Please follow the channel and stay tuned for the next one.